Marcus Hale had lived in his quiet cul-de-sac for 5 years. It was the kind of neighborhood where people argued about whose roses bloomed earliest and whether recycling bins looked aesthetic on the curb. Sure, the HOA could be annoying, but mostly it was harmless. A few warning letters about lawn height, maybe a nasty email if you left your Christmas lights up past February. But on this morning, the HOA had apparently grown teeth. It was 7:12 a.m. when Marcus heard the sharp, insistent knock. Not the neighborly kind, not the polite three-tap of a delivery guy. This was rhythmic, deliberate, the kind of knock meant to command. Marcus, still in his army t-shirt from the night before, opened the door and froze. Standing there were 3 men in tan polo shirts tucked into cargo pants. Each had a shiny badge hanging on a chain, but Marcus's trained eyes caught it instantly. The edges weren't embossed, the metal looked cheap, and the numbers were printed in what looked suspiciously like Comic Sans. The tallest one, broad-shouldered with a buzz cut, spoke first. "Mr. Hale, we're here on behalf of the Homeowners Association. We've received reports about unauthorized firearms being stored on your property. We'll need to step inside and conduct an inspection." Marcus blinked. He actually laughed, a short, dry bark. "Unauthorized firearms? What law school did you boys graduate from, Crackerjack Academy?" The man's jaw tightened. The other 2 shifted uneasily but tried to keep straight faces. One had a clipboard, as if that alone granted authority. Marcus's military instincts kicked in. He scanned their posture, their hands, the way their eyes flicked not toward him but past him into the living room. Their focus landed on the matte black gun safe against the wall. They weren't interested in enforcing rules. They were interested in that. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't slam the door. Instead, he went into the calm, deliberate mode that had carried him through patrols in Afghanistan. "Gentlemen, let me ask you a simple question. Which statute gives an HOA the authority to regulate federally registered firearms?" The buzz-cut man hesitated, then started his line. "Sir, by law." Marcus cut him off, smiling without warmth. "Good, quote me the statute, chapter and verse, I'll wait." Silence, the kind that hangs heavy, like a dropped weight. The one with the clipboard shuffled his papers. Marcus could practically see sweat gathering on his forehead. The third man, younger and fidgety, glanced at the sidewalk as if calculating exit strategies. Marcus leaned on the doorframe, arms crossed. "That's what I thought. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave my porch. You're going to walk back to your little rental car. And you're not going to set foot on my property again without an actual court order signed by a judge. Because otherwise, fellas, what you're doing is impersonating authority. And I guarantee you don't want to find out how the sheriff feels about that." For a split second, Marcus thought the tall one might push back, might try to bluff his way through. Instead, the man exhaled through his nose, gave a stiff nod, and muttered, "We'll be back." Marcus smiled, this time showing teeth. "You do that." He shut the door slowly, deliberately, and as the latch clicked, he pulled his phone from his pocket. He had already been recording. Every word, every badge flash, every shift of the eyes captured. Through the blinds, he watched them walk away. Their movements weren't casual. They were tense, deliberate. They climbed into a gray SUV with plates Marcus instantly recognized as out of state. No HOA decals, no community stickers. Just a bumper tag for a private security solutions company he'd never heard of. Marcus uploaded the footage to his cloud folder before he even brewed coffee. Training had drilled into him. Document, preserve, escalate if needed. His military service had taught him that the most dangerous threats weren't the ones who screamed. They were the ones who smiled and pretended to be official. Still, he couldn't shake the unease. These weren't kids playing dress-up. They had a plan. They knew exactly what they were looking for. He texted his neighbor Rosa, a retired teacher who lived 2 doors down. "Anyone from the HOA come to your place yet?" Her reply came quick. "What? No, why?" Marcus hesitated before typing back. "Might want to check your ring cam, just in case." He stared at his gun safe, heavy steel locked with biometric precision. Inside were hunting rifles, a shotgun from his grandfather, and 2 pistols registered in his name. All legal, all documented, and yet someone or something had sent these fakes to his door. Marcus wasn't paranoid, he was methodical, so he made a decision. Tonight he'd go through every document he owned, scan every receipt, and prepare for whatever storm was brewing. Because storms, he knew, didn't knock politely. They pounded until you answered. And this storm had just begun. Stick around, because when Marcus uploads that video, the neighborhood explodes, and the HOA board, they'll suddenly have questions about his behavior. What happens next flips the entire community upside down. By lunchtime, Marcus's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. He hadn't expected much when he uploaded the footage. Maybe a few neighbors would see it. Maybe it'd spark a half-hearted HOA debate. But the internet had other plans. Within 3 hours, his video was racking up views faster than he could refresh. Comments stacked like dominoes, hundreds of strangers chiming in with disbelief, outrage, and recognition. That's not an HOA uniform. Those guys came to my dad's place last month. Looks like private security scammers. Bruh, I'd call the sheriff yesterday. Neighbors who usually ignored Marcus at block parties suddenly treated him like the town crier. Texts poured in, phone calls, a knock from Rosa clutching her iPad with trembling hands. They came here too, she whispered, showing Marcus the playback from her Ring camera. At 9:45 p.m. the night before, the same tan polo trio had strolled past her driveway. Not knocking, not announcing themselves, just circling. One even pointed at her garage before they walked off into the dark. Marcus played it twice, jaw tightening. These guys weren't freelancing, they were canvassing. That night over takeout pizza, Marcus began laying everything out on his kitchen table like evidence markers in a crime scene. Receipts for every firearm purchase. Registration documents, the deed to his home. Warranty slips for the gun's safe. He scanned them one by one, saving them to a cloud folder titled HOA Fakes. This wasn't paranoia, it was strategy. If they came back, Marcus wanted every ounce of truth on his side. He wanted a trail no imposter could erase. At 11:00 p.m., he typed up a carefully worded email addressed to the entire HOA board. Earlier this morning, 3 individuals claiming to be HOA enforcement officers attempted to enter my home to inspect my firearms. I have video evidence of this incident. Please clarify whether these individuals were authorized representatives of the board. If not, I strongly recommend the HOA notify all residents immediately to prevent further impersonation attempts. For transparency, I have also copied the county sheriff's non-emergency line on this message. He hit send, leaned back, and let out a long exhale. By morning, only one reply had trickled in. Linda, the board chair, wrote back curtly. Marcus, the HOA has no such enforcement officers. We don't regulate firearms. I'll raise this in our next meeting. That was it. No apology. No emergency alert to the neighborhood. No acknowledgement that men had been impersonating her authority. Marcus stared at the email, shaking his head. Raise it in a meeting, he muttered. What do they think this is, the garden club? But the community didn't wait for official word. Word of Marcus's video spread faster than dandelions. Neighbors began swapping stories in a frantic group chat. A single mom reported a late-night knock from men, asking about storage safety. A retired teacher claimed they demanded to see her basement for HOA inspection. A teenage boy swore one of the imposters asked him, casually, if his dad kept anything valuable unlocked. The pattern was too clear to ignore. These weren't misunderstandings, they were probing for weaknesses. By the end of the day, Marcus had built a spreadsheet logging every account. Time, date, what was said, how they acted. He organized it with military precision, every line a piece of the puzzle. But one entry stopped him cold. A neighbor 3 streets over had captured a license plate on their dashcam, the same gray SUV Marcus saw parked outside his house. Marcus enlarged the still image, his stomach tightening. The plate was from another state entirely. And slapped on the bumper, a sticker for a private security solutions company Marcus had seen before. Not in his neighborhood, not even in his state. Overseas, contractors, the kind who sold muscle under the banner of protection. He leaned back in his chair, heart pounding with a mix of fury and dread. These weren't just con men playing dress-up. They were organized, practiced, and funded. Somebody wanted his guns or wanted him scared enough to hand them over. As Marcus sat there in the glow of his laptop, another notification dinged. This time it wasn't a neighbor, it was a stranger. An anonymous email, no subject line, no signature, just one sentence. "You're making yourself a problem, Marcus. Problems get solved." He read it twice, then a third time, the chill crawling up his spine. He'd fought warlords overseas who used subtler threats than this. Marcus closed the laptop and stood at the window, staring out at the quiet cul-de-sac. Porch lights glowed softly, sprinklers hissed across lawns, everything looked normal. But normal had died at 7:12 yesterday morning. He wasn't in a neighborhood anymore. He was in a theater of operations. And as every soldier knows, theaters of operations require a plan. Stick around, because when Marcus sets that plan in motion, the imposters don't back down. They come back. And this time, they don't bother pretending to be polite. Marcus barely slept the night after that anonymous email. He set alarms on his phone for every 2 hours, packing the house each time with the discipline of a sentry. Every creak of the floor, every passing car headlight bleeding through the blinds, every soft pop from the cooling pipes felt like a warning. He'd spent years in sandblasted outposts overseas where nights were the most dangerous hours. He knew the rhythm, pressure first, probing second, and then, if the enemy thought you were weak, contact. At 2:17 a.m., contact arrived. The security cameras chirped, motion detected at the side yard. Marcus, already awake in his chair, tapped the screen of his phone. The grainy infrared image came into focus. 3 figures creeping along the fence line, flashlights low, trying not to be seen. The same tan polo shirts. The same swagger of men who thought neighbors would mistake them for authority. But there was nothing official about the crowbar one of them carried. Marcus muted the feed, reached for the Glock at his hip, and moved through his house like a shadow. He killed every light, shutting his family into a cocoon of silence. His wife stirred once, whispering his name. "Stay put," he breathed. "Don't make a sound." Downstairs, he set himself at the corner of the living room, gun low and steady. He didn't want to shoot anyone, but he also wasn't about to let armed imposters break into his home and inspect anything. Outside, the intruders whispered among themselves. The audio pickup on the cameras caught snippets. "Back window looks easy. Just keep it quick. We get the safe, we're out. Guy's not military, he won't fight." Marcus's lips curled. Not military, that assumption might be the last mistake they ever made. The crowbar wedged into the window frame, the metal squealing faintly as pressure was applied. Marcus raised his pistol, finger resting alongside the trigger guard. Every muscle in his body coiled, ready to strike. But then, from across the street, a dog barked furiously, triggered by the movement. Porch lights flicked on in a cascade, one house after another. Curtains shifted as sleepy neighbors peeked outside. The imposters froze. The crowbar slipped. One of them cursed under his breath. "Abort," hissed the tallest. "Too many eyes." Marcus exhaled slowly as the men slunk back toward the SUV waiting at the corner. The taillights flared red, then vanished into the night. For now, the siege had broken. But Marcus knew what came next. Once an enemy had shown their hand, they never just walked away. They regrouped. They doubled down. They tested you again harder. By dawn, he'd rewatched the footage 5 times. The SUV's plates were covered with a dark plastic shield, illegal, designed to dodge surveillance. Their faces were partially obscured by caps and low light, but their voices, distinct, clear enough that Marcus saved the audio files separately. When his kids came downstairs for breakfast, he smiled like everything was normal. He buttered toast. He poured cereal, but behind the calm mask he was planning. Neighbors trickled over in the morning, coffee mugs in hand, wide-eyed from the late-night barking and flashing lights. "Was it them again?" Rosa asked. "They tried," Marcus said simply, "but the neighborhood saved us without even knowing it." Word spread faster than wildfire. By midday, families were organizing informal watches, porch cameras were checked, motion lights were installed. Marcus became the hub, the reluctant general of a suburban militia armed with doorbell apps and group texts. Yet even as neighbors rallied, Marcus sensed the undertone: fear. People weren't just worried about break-ins anymore. They were worried about what kind of men would pose as HOA officials to get inside homes, and what they were really after. That evening, Marcus finally dialed the sheriff's office, forwarding them the audio files, the SUV footage, and his growing spreadsheet of incidents. The deputy's voice on the other end was polite but weary. "Sir, I understand your concern, but unless they actually entered your home or brandished weapons, there's only so much we can do. Could be scammers, could be burglars. Burglars don't wear matching uniforms and survey an entire neighborhood," Marcus snapped. "This is coordinated." "I'll file the report," the deputy replied, "but keep your doors locked." Click end of call. Marcus set the phone down slowly. Keep your doors locked. That was the county's defense strategy, against men who had already tried prying open his window. No, that wouldn't cut it. As twilight bled across the cul-de-sac, Marcus began reinforcing his home. Not with bars or alarms, with tactics. He mapped fields of fire. He rehearsed movement paths through hallways. He checked sightlines from upstairs windows. If they came back, and Marcus knew they would, this time the neighborhood wouldn't just watch. This time the fight would be on his terms. And just after midnight, while the street lay wrapped in uneasy quiet, the SUV returned. Only this time it didn't stop at the curb. It rolled straight into Marcus's driveway. The low hum of the SUV's engine vibrated through the quiet cul-de-sac as it crept up Marcus's driveway. Midnight shadows stretched long across the concrete, swallowing the vehicle's chrome edges. Marcus stood inside the front window, pistol at his side, watching through a narrow slit in the blinds. The engine cut off, silence, then doors opened one after another. 4 men stepped out. Not 2, not 3, 4. And this time their uniforms were sharper, tan polos tucked into tactical pants, utility belts strapped at the waist. Fake badges gleamed under the porch light. To a casual eye, they looked official. To Marcus, they looked like an amateur militia cosplaying authority. The tallest one adjusted his belt and stepped forward, rapping hard on the front door. "Open up, HOA compliance inspection. We have authority to search the premises." The voice boomed loud enough for half the neighborhood to hear. Marcus didn't move, didn't answer. Instead, he hit record on his phone. Every second counted now. Evidence was his most powerful weapon, aside from the one in his hand. Another knock, louder. "Sir, failure to comply will result in penalties and confiscation. Do you understand?" Marcus's jaw tightened. Confiscation. They weren't even hiding it anymore. Upstairs, his wife whispered harshly down the stairwell. "Marcus, they're going to wake the kids." He signaled with a hand, "Quiet, stay hidden." Outside, the men fanned out. One circled toward the side gate. Another lingered by the SUV, scanning the street like lookout duty. The leader kept pounding the door, his fist echoing like gunfire in the still night. Then Marcus flipped on the porch light. The men froze, caught in the sudden glare. Marcus yanked the door open, just enough to be seen, not entered. "What you think you're doing," he said, voice low, calm, dangerous, "isn't legal. You're on private property in the middle of the night, dressed like cops you're not. That's impersonation, that's burglary, and that's the last warning you're getting." The leader sneered. "Save the tough talk, old man. You don't scare us. You're outnumbered. Step aside before this gets ugly." Marcus tilted his head, half a smile cutting across his face. "Ugly? Son, you haven't seen ugly yet." And with that, he slammed the door in their faces. Chaos erupted. Fists pounded harder. Another man jiggled the side gate, trying to force it open. Marcus moved like clockwork. He slid the living room couch against the front entryway, barricading it. He clicked his radio to the emergency channel, the one he'd set up with neighbors after last night's incident. "Code red," Marcus whispered. "Driveway, 4 men, all geared up. Get eyes on me." Almost instantly, a reply crackled back. "Copy, we're moving." Curtains across the street shifted. Porch lights flickered on. Within 60 seconds, the entire cul-de-sac looked awake again. The imposters cursed. Their cover, if they'd ever had one, was unraveling fast. The leader pressed his face against the glass sidelight, glaring in. "This is your last chance. Hand over the weapons in your safe, or we come in and take them." Marcus lifted his pistol high enough for the silhouette to be obvious. He didn't point it, yet, but the sight of cold steel framed against his face sent the message loud and clear. "You step through that threshold," Marcus said evenly, "and you'll find out how military mode really works." The leader flinched, just a flicker, but masked it with a smirk. Behind him, the lookout at the SUV shouted, "Cops, cops!" For a split second, Marcus thought real law enforcement had arrived. Relief almost washed over him. But when headlights swung across the street, it wasn't a sheriff's cruiser. It was another SUV, black, windows tinted, no markings. A second team. The imposters on his porch backed away fast, regrouping toward the vehicles. The neighborhood stared in stunned silence as 8 figures total now clustered in the street. Marcus's blood went cold. This wasn't petty intimidation anymore. This was an operation, coordinated, equipped, and expanding. And before Marcus could process, the second SUV's passenger door opened. Out stepped a woman, sharp suit, clipboard in hand, voice cool and rehearsed. "Ladies and gentlemen," she called to the whole cul-de-sac, "I'm with the homeowner's executive authority. We'll be conducting mandatory inspections starting tonight. Your neighbor here has been resisting compliance. Don't make the same mistake." The imposters formed a line beside her, like soldiers on parade. Marcus stared, gun steady, as every neighbor's porch light glowed down on the scene. The war had just gone public. The woman's voice carried like it was rehearsed in some courtroom or staged press conference. Calm, commanding, oozing the kind of confidence meant to disarm ordinary people. "Homeowner's executive authority," she said again, clipboard poised like it carried divine law. "Your HOA has failed to enforce community rules. We've been contracted to step in. This neighborhood will be brought into compliance." Compliance? That word rang like a gunshot through Marcus's ears. He scanned the neighbors' faces across the street, half of them pale with confusion, others wide-eyed with fear. One man whispered, "Can they do that?" Another muttered, "Looks official enough." The imposters lined up like a uniformed wall behind her, tan polos and tactical pants giving the illusion of legitimacy. They weren't trying to hide anymore. They were counting on fear, on doubt, on the average person's instinct to avoid trouble. Marcus stepped onto his porch, door still half closed behind him, gun holstered but visible at his side. His voice cut through the night. "Listen to me, all of you. These people aren't real. They're fakes. They're not cops, they're not state, they're not federal. They don't answer to anyone. They're criminals, plain and simple, wearing cheap uniforms and plastic badges." The woman smirked, flipping a page on her clipboard. "That's a strong accusation, Mr. Daniels. Care to back it up? Perhaps show the neighbors your little safe full of illegal weapons, or should we demonstrate why resisting only makes things worse?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd, the seed of doubt planted. Some neighbors pulled back toward their doors, wanting nothing to do with conflict. Others leaned forward, clinging to Marcus's words like lifelines. Rosa, from 3 houses down, shouted, "Don't you believe a word she says? We've seen them sneaking around at night, breaking into yards. Real cops don't hide license plates and prowl fences." A cheer of agreement rose from a few porches, but not enough. The cul-de-sac was splitting, fear on one side, defiance on the other. The woman's smile never faltered. "It's simple. Cooperate and inspections will be quick, refuse and well." She let the silence hang heavy. One of her men cracked his knuckles, the sound carrying like a warning. Marcus felt his pulse steady, the way it always did before action. He'd seen this tactic before, halfway across the world. Intimidation campaigns, propaganda with boots on the ground. Convince the weak, isolate the strong, then crush resistance with numbers. Not this time. He raised his voice, firm and clear. "Neighbors, remember last night? Those same men tried breaking into my home at 2 in the morning. They came with crowbars, not clipboards. I've got them on camera, audio too. If they were legit, they wouldn't need to crawl through windows in the dark." Gasps traveled across the crowd. A woman clutched her husband's arm. Another neighbor pulled out his phone, whispering about calling the real sheriff. The imposters shifted uneasily. Their leader, the tall one with the sneer, snapped, "Enough talk, we're wasting time." The woman raised a hand, silencing him without looking. Her eyes stayed locked on Marcus, calculating, measuring. "You seem eager for a fight," she said softly. "But fights have consequences, not just for you but for everyone watching. Are you willing to bring that on your neighbors?" Marcus didn't blink. "The only people bringing consequences here are you, and if you think I'll roll over while you terrorize families, you picked the wrong street." Silence followed, thick and electric. Then slowly, porch by porch, more neighbors stepped forward. A man in slippers holding a baseball bat. A teenager, phone raised high to record every second. Rosa clutching a garden shovel like a battle axe. The cul-de-sac was choosing sides, and the line was tilting against the imposters. The woman's smirk faded at last. She snapped her clipboard shut, her tone icy. "So be it, but don't think this ends here. You've escalated the situation. We'll be back with authority that cannot be questioned." She motioned to her men. One by one, they retreated to the SUVs, engines roaring to life. Tires screeched as they peeled away, vanishing into the night. The neighbors exhaled all at once, like a collective lung deflating. Some clapped Marcus on the back, calling him a hero. Others muttered about moving, about selling, about how this was too much for a quiet neighborhood. Marcus stood still, staring down the street long after the taillights were gone. He knew what came next. They regroup, they escalate, they'd return stronger. And the next time, he wasn't planning to just defend. He was planning to strike first. By sunrise, Marcus's neighborhood looked the same as ever. Kids rode bikes, sprinklers hissed across manicured lawns. Retirees shuffled out for morning walks with coffee mugs in hand. On the surface, life went on. But Marcus saw it for what it was, a battlefield in disguise. The imposters hadn't been bluffing. They would come back. And when they did, Marcus refused to let his family, or anyone else on the block, stand unprepared. He gathered his closest neighbors in his garage that morning. The big workbench was cleared, a whiteboard set up against the wall. On it, he'd drawn crude maps of the cul-de-sac, driveways, yards, choke points. "All right," Marcus began, voice calm, commanding. "They'll return, and next time they won't waste words. We can't depend on the sheriff's office. They're playing catch-up while we're staring down an organized unit. So here's how we fight back." Some faces paled. Others leaned in with grim determination. Rosa folded her arms, shovel still leaning against her shoulder like a badge of honor. Marcus tapped the map. "We don't go toe-to-toe, we control space. Lights, cameras, alarms, we make this street impossible to approach without being seen. We build a net." By midday, every house had motion lights installed. Neighbors shared camera feeds into a single encrypted group chat Marcus created. He set up walkie-talkies for quick comms, distributing them like contraband. Then came the drills. Kids were taught safe rooms, where to hide if things turned ugly. Parents practiced lock and barricade routines. Retirees took watch duty shifts, stationed on porches with phones ready to record. And Marcus, he trained the willing. Behind the garage, he ran mock exercises. How to spot flanking, how to hold a defensive posture, even how to use everyday tools as deterrents. Baseball bats, garden rakes, heavy flashlights, they all had their place. "This isn't about turning you into soldiers," Marcus told them. "It's about making sure you're not victims. When they see resistance, they'll hesitate. That hesitation is our advantage." The neighbors listened, sweating under the afternoon sun, fear mixing with newfound resolve. By evening, the cul-de-sac was transformed. What had once been rows of sleepy houses now looked like a quiet fortress, stitched together by trust and strategy. Still, Marcus knew morale was fragile. Fear lingered in the cracks. So after dinner, he stood at the center of the street, calling everyone out for a meeting. Lanterns flickered, families clustered together, murmurs rising in the night air. Marcus stepped forward. "You've all seen what we're dealing with," he said, voice carrying steady. "They want us divided, they want us scared, but they don't know who they're up against. We're not just homeowners, we're a community, and communities don't break easy." A cheer rose, shaky at first, then stronger. Even the teenagers who'd been secretly recording for TikTok raised their fists. Rosa shouted, "Let M come back, we're ready." Marcus smiled, but inside his mind was running cold calculations. Ready, but for what? Because deep down, he knew the imposters wouldn't be intimidated by porch lights and cameras. They'd already escalated past intimidation. No, the next step would be direct action, and Marcus needed to be ready to meet them head-on. Later that night, Marcus sat alone in his study. Maps spread across the desk, surveillance footage looping on the laptop. He wasn't just thinking defense anymore, he was planning offense. He recalled training manuals, tactical patterns from years past. If this were an outpost, how would he repel a night raid? If this were a hostile village, how would he protect civilians while neutralizing aggressors? He began sketching choke points at the cul-de-sac entrance. He outlined fallback positions. He listed supply needs, batteries, radios, first aid. Then he opened the locked cabinet. Inside lay the tools of his past. Rifles, ammunition, Kevlar he hadn't worn in a decade. His hands hovered over them, not out of doubt, but out of gravity. Once he stepped into this mode, there was no turning back. He loaded a magazine, the clicks echoing in the silence. Military mode wasn't theory anymore. It was real. The next morning, neighbors spotted him walking the street with a quiet authority, scanning angles, pointing out blind spots, moving with the fluid confidence of a soldier on patrol. Whispers followed him, but so did trust. Rosa put it best when she muttered to a friend, "Feels like we're living inside one of those war movies now, except it's our block." And as if on cue, late that afternoon, Marcus's phone buzzed with a camera alert. Not one SUV this time. Two, rolling slow past the neighborhood entrance. The imposters were back. But they weren't alone. Behind them, a white box truck followed, its rear doors sealed tight, no markings on the side. And for the first time, Marcus's gut clenched with a darker thought. This isn't just intimidation anymore. This is logistics. Whatever's in that truck, they plan to use it. The two SUVs rolled slow, engines low and menacing, boxing the entrance of the cul-de-sac like predators circling prey. But it was the truck that drew every eye. The big white box van trailing behind, lumbering forward with a growl that seemed too heavy for a neighborhood street. Marcus stood at the curb, arms crossed, heart steady. His neighbors lingered in doorways and porches, whispering, phones raised, cameras rolling. They were scared, but they were watching, and that was power. The imposters spilled out of the SUVs, 8 men this time, moving with choreographed precision. Not cops, not military, but trained. Marcus could see it in their stances, the way they scanned angles, the way their hands hovered near the tools on their belts. The woman stepped out last, clipboard tucked under one arm, her smirk razor-sharp. She gestured casually like she owned the place. "Tonight," she announced, "we enforce compliance." She snapped her fingers. The rear doors of the truck swung open. Neighbors gasped. Inside sat heavy crates, black, plastic, military style. One man hopped in and dragged one to the pavement, popping it open with a crowbar. The contents glinted under the streetlight. Not tools, not paperwork. Chains, restraints, and bolt cutters long enough to shear a lock in seconds. A ripple of shock rolled through the cul-de-sac. Marcus's jaw tightened. They weren't here to bluff anymore, they were here to seize. The leader of the imposters barked. "Daniels, step forward, surrender your weapons, now." Marcus didn't move. He let the silence stretch, the weight of it pressing down on everyone watching. Finally, he spoke, calm, steady, carrying like an order. "Neighbors' positions." At once the street came alive. Porch lights blazed. Cameras whirred. Motion alarms shrieked. Curtains flung open as half a dozen phones began live streaming to social media. From behind Marcus, Rosa appeared, shovel in hand, standing tall. Two dads flanked her with baseball bats. The teenager with the phone angled it toward the imposters, narrating, "They're back, trying to take our neighbor's house. Look at this, chains, bolt cutters, everything." The imposters hesitated, just for a second. They hadn't expected resistance, not like this. Marcus took a step forward, hand resting lightly on the pistol at his side. His voice dropped low. "You see that? Every porch light? Every phone? That's evidence. You make a move here, you're not ghosts anymore. You're criminals live-streamed for the world to see. Step 1 foot onto this property and your little game ends tonight." The leader sneered, but Marcus caught the twitch in his jaw, pressure, doubt. The neighborhood was no longer passive, it was awake. The woman narrowed her eyes. Enough theatrics, move in. Two of the imposters started forward, chains in hand. Marcus barked, "Flash." From 3 porches, high-powered floodlights snapped on, blasting the street in blinding white. The men stumbled, shielding their eyes. Phones zoomed in, recording every flinch. The cul-de-sac erupted with noise, car alarms blaring, neighbors shouting, dogs barking in chaos. The imposters staggered in the glare, their false authority crumbling under raw exposure. Marcus stepped into the street now, voice booming. "You want compliance? Here's compliance. We comply with the Constitution. We comply with the law. And last I checked, impersonating cops and breaking into homes isn't on the list." A cheer tore through the crowd, emboldening even the quietest neighbors. The imposters faltered, glancing at the truck, at the woman, at each other. The woman hissed like a snake cornered. "Do you realize who you're dealing with?" Marcus leveled his gaze, cold and unflinching. "Do you?" She raised her hand, a signal. The imposters braced, chains rattling. Marcus's hand slid to his radio. He spoke one word. "Now." From a darkened upstairs window, a blinding red laser dot danced across the pavement. Then another, then a third. Neighbors with airsoft scopes and mounted flashlights aimed down, not weapons of war, but enough to simulate precision. The imposters froze, eyes wide, unsure. Was it bluff, or were they truly under sights? The woman's face finally cracked. She wasn't smirking anymore. "This isn't over," she spat. With a sharp gesture, she ordered retreat. The imposters hauled the crates back into the truck, slammed the doors, and scrambled into the SUVs. Engines roared, tires screeched. Within seconds, the convoy was gone, swallowed by the night. The neighborhood erupted cheers, shouts, tears of relief. Marcus stood in the center, breathing steady, shoulders squared. He won the standoff. But his gut told him the truth. That wasn't a retreat, that was regrouping. And next time, they wouldn't come with chains. They'd come with something far worse. The night was restless. Even after the imposters' convoy tore out of the neighborhood, engines fatting into the distance, no one slept easy. Marcus knew better than to celebrate. That kind of operation didn't dissolve in one night, it regrouped. And sure enough, just before dawn, he heard it again. Engines. Marcus was already geared up, boots laced, vest tightened, radio clipped. He rose from his chair on the porch as headlights rolled slow across the cul-de-sac. But this time it wasn't just the imposters. A county sheriff's cruiser slid in first, light bar flashing. Behind it, 2 unmarked SUVs, sleek, professional, government-issued. Neighbors stirred awake, curtains twitching, phones raised, no one dared blink. The imposter convoy rolled in behind, same SUVs, same white box truck lumbering along like a stubborn beast. They parked head-to-head with the sheriff's vehicles, and for the first time Marcus saw hesitation on their faces. Real law had arrived. The sheriff, a broad man with silver hair and steady eyes, stepped out. He rested one hand casually on his holster, not a threat, just presence. He called out, voice booming down the street. "Marcus Daniels." Marcus raised his hand. "That's me." The sheriff nodded. "You reported armed imposters impersonating officers, threatening seizure of your property." Marcus pointed squarely at the group by the truck. "That's them." All eyes swung to the imposters. Their leader's smirk returned, thinner this time. He flashed a badge, quick, almost casual. "Special operations," he lied smoothly. "We're conducting a sanctioned retrieval." But this time his words fell flat. Cameras clicked, live streams rolled, every neighbor recorded. The sheriff squinted. "Special operations," he extended his hand. "Let's see the paperwork." The man froze. The woman with the clipboard stepped up fast, trying to paper over the silence. She flipped a folder open, but Marcus saw it from here. Blank forms, no seals, no stamps, nothing legal. The sheriff didn't even touch it. He just raised his voice, steel creeping into the tone. "You're under arrest for impersonating law enforcement officers. Drop the gear. Hands on your heads." A ripple of shock hit the cul-de-sac. Neighbors gasped, some cheered. The imposters panicked, half reaching for their crates, half looking for escape. And that's when Marcus moved. He strode forward, voice like a drill sergeant. "You heard him, hands up. Now, you thought this neighborhood was soft? Wrong street, wrong man." The neighbors followed suit. Rosa stepped forward with her shovel, two dads with bats, teenagers with cameras all circling like a net. The imposters were outnumbered, outrecorded, out of time. Still, the leader snarled. "We've got the truck. You don't know what's inside. You can't stop this." The sheriff gestured to his deputies. "Open it." Bolt cutters snapped the padlock. The rear doors creaked open. The crowd leaned in. Inside weren't just chains and crates. Inside were blueprints, lists, photographs, dossiers of homes marked with red circles. Entire neighborhoods targeted. It wasn't about Marcus alone. It was bigger. The sheriff's jaw clenched. Deputies hauled out crates and laid them bare under the flashing lights. Every phone captured it. Evidence of a coordinated fraud ring, masquerading as an HOA police force, preying on homeowners to seize property. The woman dropped her clipboard. The leader bolted, running full speed toward the woods. Marcus didn't hesitate. His boots hit the pavement in a sprint, instincts firing like he was back in service. He cut the man off at the fence line, body-checking him so hard the imposter hit the dirt gasping. Marcus pinned him down, voice low and cold. "You picked the wrong vet to mess with." Deputies swarmed in, cuffs snapping tight. The cul-de-sac erupted in cheers, louder than any 4th of July. Neighbors hugged, cried, shouted Marcus's name. For once, they weren't just witnesses, they were victors. The sheriff clapped Marcus on the shoulder. "You held them off long enough for us to close in. You didn't just protect your street, Daniels. You helped expose a statewide ring." Marcus looked around, at the neighbors with their phones, their bats, their shovels, and he smiled. "No one fights alone, not here." The imposters were loaded into cruisers, their fake authority stripped under real cuffs. The truck was seized, evidence logged. By sunrise, the street was quiet again, bathed in soft golden light. Marcus finally sat back on his porch, exhaustion weighing heavy but his heart steady. The neighborhood was safe, for now. But he knew one thing for certain. Fake authority always folds when faced with real courage. And in this cul-de-sac, courage lived on every porch. So what do you think? Would you have stood with Marcus or hidden inside your house? Drop your answer below, because this isn't just a story. It's a question of what you do when the lights come on and the fakes try to take over. And if you want to see how Marcus's story connects to the next unbelievable HOA showdown, make sure you're subscribed, because trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next. You've heard this confession, now wait until you hear the next one. The truth that shatters everything you thought you knew.